The massage room smelled of lavender and eucalyptus, but Joon-young barely noticed. He lay face down on the table, his designer suit exchanged for a towel that felt too thin, too exposing. Every muscle in his body was wound tight like a spring ready to snap. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since he'd slept more than 2 hours at a stretch. Mr. Park. The voice was warm, accented, feminine. He grunted in response, not bothering to lift his head from the cushioned cradle. My name is Aoife. I'll be your masseuse today. He heard her moving around the room, the soft pad of feet, the whisper of fabric, then the sound of oil being warmed between palms. He closed his eyes tighter, willing himself to relax, knowing it was futile. Nothing helped anymore. Not the sleeping pills, not the whiskey, not the... Her hands touched his back. Joon-young's breath caught. It wasn't just the warmth of her palms, though they were impossibly warm, like she'd been holding sunlight. It wasn't just the pressure, though it was perfect, firm enough to feel intentional, gentle enough to feel like care. It was something else, something that made his skin come alive under her touch in a way that had nothing to do with the massage and everything to do with the woman giving it. You're very tense, she said softly, her accent curling around the words like honey. When was the last time you relaxed? Can't remember, he muttered into the face cradle. Her hands began to work, starting at his shoulders. Strong fingers dug into the knots there, and he nearly groaned. Not from pain, though there was some, but from the sheer relief of finally being touched with intention. Her thumbs found the pressure points along his shoulder blades, and something in his chest loosened. Breathe for me, she instructed. Deep breath in and out. He obeyed without thinking. Her hands moved in rhythm with his breathing, sliding down either side of his spine with long, slow strokes that made his nerve endings sing. There was something almost hypnotic about the way she touched him, confident, knowing, like she could read the story his body was telling and was determined to rewrite the ending. She worked in silence for a while, her palms gliding over his skin with oil-slicked ease. Down his back, along his sides, her fingers occasionally grazing the edges of the towel in a way that made him hyper-aware of every inch of exposed skin. He could feel the heat radiating from her body as she leaned over him, close enough that he caught a scent beneath the lavender, something warm and sweet, like shea butter and vanilla. His mind, usually racing with litigation strategies and financial projections and his ex-wife's threats, went blissfully, dangerously quiet. You carry all your stress here, Aoife murmured, her fingers working the tight muscles at the base of his skull. Her touch was firm but tender, each stroke feeling almost intimate in the dimly lit room. And here, she added, moving to his lower back, her palms pressing down with delicious pressure that made him bite back a sound he definitely shouldn't make in a professional setting. She was professional, completely professional, but there was something about the way her hands lingered just a fraction longer than necessary, the way her breath seemed to catch when her fingers traced along his ribs, that made the air in the room feel thick and charged. Turn over, please, she said quietly. Joon-young hesitated. He wasn't sure he should. His body was responding to her touch in ways that had nothing to do with relaxation and everything to do with the fact that he was a man who hadn't been touched, really touched in months. And this woman's hands were doing things to him that he couldn't quite control. But he turned over anyway, carefully arranging the towel, keeping his eyes closed because looking at her felt dangerous right now. He heard her move to the head of the table, felt her presence above him. Then her fingers were in his hair, massaging his scalp, and sweet heaven, he hadn't known that could feel so good. His eyes fluttered closed as she worked, her fingertips making small circles that sent tingles down his spine.
Pause. Welcome back to K-Whisper TV. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment. I love reading your comments, and if you're new here, welcome to the family. Go ahead and click that subscribe button and join the family. We're on a mission to 2,500 subscribers. and your support truly means everything. Thank you for being here. Now, let's go back to the story.
Go down, he said suddenly, the words coming out rougher than he intended. There was a pause, just a heartbeat, long enough for him to wonder if he'd crossed a line, if she understood what he meant. Just his chest, just a professional massage, nothing more. Even if his body was screaming for something else entirely. Of course, she said softly. Her hands left his hair and moved to his shoulders. Then, slowly, deliberately, they slid down to his chest. Joon-young stopped breathing. Her palms were warm against his skin, spreading oil in long, smooth strokes across his pectorals. Her fingers were strong and sure, kneading the muscles there with the same expert pressure she'd used on his back. But this felt different, more vulnerable, more exposed. He could feel every point of contact like a brand, every slide of her hands like electricity across his skin. She worked methodically, professionally, but he could hear a slight change in her breathing, could feel the way her fingers trembled just slightly when they grazed over his heart, which was pounding so hard he was certain she could feel it. His own hands clenched into fists at his sides, fighting the overwhelming urge to reach up, to touch her, to see if her skin was as soft as it looked when he'd caught that brief glimpse of her before closing his eyes. Her thumbs traced along his collarbones, dipped into the hollow of his throat, and he made a sound, half sigh, half groan, that was absolutely not appropriate for a massage. Sorry, he muttered. Don't apologize, she whispered, and there was something in her voice, something warm and understanding and maybe just a little bit affected. It means you're finally letting go. She was right. The tension that had been his constant companion for weeks was melting away under her touch. Her hands moved lower to his abdomen, and he felt the muscles there contract involuntarily. She paused, her palms resting just above the edge of the towel, and for a moment the room was so quiet he could hear both their hearts beating. Then she continued, her movements slower now, more careful, as if she too was aware of how charged the air had become. She massaged his arms, his hands, her fingers interlacing with his briefly in a way that felt far too intimate for a professional service. Joon-young's mind was floating now, suspended somewhere between consciousness and dreams. The room seemed to shrink until there was nothing but the warmth of her hands, the subtle scent of her perfume, the whisper of her breath. His body felt heavy and light at the same time, every nerve ending alive and singing. She moved back to his chest, her strokes becoming longer, slower, almost reverent. Her palms slid up to his shoulders, down his sides, across his ribs. Each touch was perfect. Each movement was exactly what he needed. It was as if she could read his body like a book, knew exactly where he ached, exactly what he craved. And God, what he craved. But she was professional. Her touch, though intimate, never crossed the line. She was an artist, and his body was her canvas, and she was painting relief across his skin with every stroke. Gradually, impossibly, he felt himself slipping. The exhaustion that had been clawing at him for weeks finally won. His breathing deepened. His muscles went slack. The last thing he registered before sleep claimed him was the warmth of her hands on his chest and the soft sound of her breath above him. For the first time in 3 weeks, Joon-young slept. He woke slowly, consciousness returning in fragments. The lavender scent, the soft music still playing, the warmth of the heated table beneath him. He blinked his eyes open, disoriented, having no idea how long he'd been out. The room was dimmer now, the lights lowered. He turned his head slightly and froze. Aoife was across the room, her back to him as she organized her supplies. And Joon-young got his first real look at her. She was curved in ways that made his mouth go dry. Her spa uniform, simple black pants, and a fitted top did absolutely nothing to hide the generous swell of her hips, the dramatic curve of her waist, the full, round shape of her backside that moved with unconscious grace as she reached for a bottle on the upper shelf. She was stunning, not in the delicate, willowy way his ex-wife had been, but in a way that was earthy and real and utterly captivating. Her skin was deep brown, rich and flawless, and her hair was pulled back in a neat bun that showed off the elegant line of her neck. As if sensing his gaze, she turned. Their eyes met. Joon-young's heart stopped. She was beautiful. Full lips, high cheekbones, eyes that were warm and intelligent and just a little bit startled. There was a moment, just a fraction of a second, where something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or awareness. Something that made his chest tight and his pulse quicken. "You're awake," she said softly, and there was a slight flush on her cheeks. "You slept for almost 40 minutes. He sat up slowly, acutely aware that he was still just wearing a towel. "I haven't slept in weeks." Her expression softened into something that looked like genuine concern. "I'm glad you could rest." She moved toward him to hand him his robe, and as she got closer, he caught that scent again, shea butter and vanilla, and something uniquely her. She was tall, he realized. Even without heels, she was nearly eye level with him as he sat on the table. "Thank you," he said, taking the robe, his fingers accidentally brushing hers. The contact was brief, barely there, but it sent a jolt through him that had nothing to do with static electricity. She pulled her hand back quickly, professionally. "You can get dressed. Take your time." She turned to leave, and he watched her walk away, watched the sway of her hips, the movement of her body, and felt something shift inside his chest. Something that had been dead for months, flickering back to life. "Wait," he called out, not even sure what he wanted to say. She paused at the door, turned back. Yes. He should ask for her card. Ask when she worked next. Say something smooth and professional. Instead, he just said, "What's your name again?" A small smile curved her lips. "Aoife." "Aoife," he repeated, and the name felt like honey on his tongue. "Thank you, Aoife." "You're welcome, Mr. Park." Then she was gone, and he was alone in the dimly lit room with the scent of lavender and the memory of her hands on his skin. Joon-young sat there for a long moment, his heart pounding, his mind reeling. He'd come here for relief from stress. He'd found something else entirely. And as he slowly got dressed, pulling on his expensive clothes that suddenly felt too formal, too constricting, he couldn't stop thinking about her hands, her touch, her curves, her smile. That night, for the first time in 3 weeks, Joon-young went home and slept. But his dreams were no longer about his ex-wife or his company or his failing marriage. They were about a woman with magic hands and a smile that made his troubles disappear. They were about Aoife. 3 months earlier, Joon-young had never thought his marriage would end in a lawyer's office that smelled of stale coffee and expensive leather. "She wants what?" He stared at his attorney, certain he'd misheard. "Half the company, Joon-young." Attorney Kong adjusted his glasses, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Park is claiming that her companionship and social connections were instrumental in JY Industries' growth over the past 5 years. Joon-young laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound that surprised even him. "Her companionship? She hasn't shared my bed in 2 years. And her social connections? You mean the affair she had with half of Seoul's elite while I was building the company from nothing?" "I understand your frustration, but—" "No." Joon-young stood, his chair scraping against the polished floor. "She cheated. Multiple times. I have proof. She doesn't get to destroy me financially because she couldn't keep her legs closed." Kong winced at the crudeness, but nodded. "We'll fight it. But Joon-young, you need to prepare yourself. South Korean divorce law can be complicated, and your wife has hired the best lawyers money can buy. Your money, ironically. That had been 3 months ago. 3 months of depositions and negotiations and threats. 3 months of his ex-wife. He refused to think of her as anything else now, calling at all hours, alternating between tears and rage. 3 months of watching the company he'd built with his own hands, his own vision, his own blood and sweat, being picked apart by lawyers who charged more per hour than most people made in a week. The stress had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there before. At 34, he was starting to look 40. He'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose, muscle turning to sinew as meals became an afterthought. Sleep had become a distant memory, something other people did. People whose wives didn't send threatening emails at 3 a.m. about taking everything he'd ever worked for. 2 weeks before the massage. "You look like shit." Joon-young didn't even bother looking up from his laptop. He was in his office, where he'd been for the past 16 hours, reviewing financial projections for the 5th time. "Good morning to you too, Min-jun." His best friend since university strode into the office like he owned it, which, as the chief operating officer of JY Industries, he sort of did. Min-jun was everything Joon-young wasn't: relaxed, charming, the kind of man who could make friends with a brick wall. He was also the only person who could walk into Joon-young's office without knocking and live to tell the tale. "Seriously, when did you last sleep?" Min-jun dropped into the chair across from him, studying him with concerned eyes. "You look like a ghost. A very angry, very exhausted ghost." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're—" Min-jun leaned forward, lowering his voice even though they were alone. "You're falling apart, brother. And I get it. What she's doing to you, it's not right. But you can't let her destroy you like this." Joon-young finally looked up. "She's trying to take my company, Min-jun. The company we built together. You and me. From nothing. She never gave a damn about JY Industries except as a source of credit cards and country club memberships. And now she wants half. The lawyers will handle it. The lawyers are bleeding me dry almost as fast as she is." Min-jun sighed, running a hand through his hair. "When did you last sleep? And I mean really sleep, not that thing you do where you pass out at your desk for 20 minutes. Joon-young tried to remember. "Tuesday. It's Friday. Then last Tuesday. Jesus Christ." Min-jun stood abruptly. "That's it. I'm staging an intervention. I don't have time for—" "You're going to make time. Because at the rate you're going, you'll be dead before the divorce is finalized, and then she'll get everything anyway." Min-jun pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. "There's this place. A spa. High-end, discreet, the kind of place where Seoul's elite go to actually relax. I don't need a spa day, I need— What you need is to sleep. And apparently you can't do that on your own." Min-jun's expression softened. "Look, I know a guy who went there. Said it changed his life. He'd been dealing with insomnia for years. Tried everything. 1 session at this place, and he slept like a baby. That's ridiculous. So, is not sleeping for 3 weeks straight, but here we are." Min-jun was already typing on his phone. "I'm booking you an appointment. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Don't make me drag you there. I have a meeting with the board at— I'll handle the board. You're going to this spa, you're getting a massage, and you're going to sleep. That's an order." Joon-young wanted to argue, but the truth was he was exhausted. Bone-deep, soul-crushing exhausted. The kind of tired that made his eyes burn and his thoughts sluggish. And Min-jun was right. He couldn't keep going like this. "Fine," he muttered. 1 session. But if this is some kind of weird cult thing, it's a massage, not a Scientology recruitment. Min-jun grinned, the first genuine smile Joon-young had seen from him in weeks. "Trust me on this. These people have magic hands. Or maybe they'll just beat the sadness out of you. Either way, you'll feel better." Joon-young managed a weak smile. "You have such a way with words. It's why you pay me the big bucks." Min-jun headed for the door, then paused. "Hey, Joon-young." "Yeah." "She doesn't deserve you. She never did. And whatever happens with the company, we'll figure it out. Together. Like we always have." The lump in Joon-young's throat made it hard to speak. "Thanks, brother." After Min-jun left, Joon-young sat in his office, staring at the city lights beyond his window. Seoul glittered below him, millions of lives being lived while his fell apart. He thought about his wife, ex-wife, he had to remember that, and how they'd started. Young love, or what he'd thought was love. She'd been beautiful and sophisticated, from one of Seoul's old money families, the kind of woman who looked perfect on his arm at galas and charity events. He'd been so stupid, so blind, building his empire while she built her list of lovers. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. He'd made peace with that mostly. The worst part was that she wanted to take his company, the one thing that was truly his, the product of countless sleepless nights, risky decisions, moments of brilliance and desperation. She wanted to rip it in half just to punish him for having the audacity to divorce her. His phone buzzed. Another email from her lawyers. He didn't bother reading it. They were all the same anyway, demands, threats, projections of how much of his life they could legally steal. Joon-young closed his laptop and stood. His reflection in the dark window showed a stranger, gaunt, hollow-eyed, haunted. Min-jun was right. He was falling apart. Maybe a massage wouldn't fix anything. Maybe it was just an expensive waste of time. But at this point, what did he have to lose? Meanwhile, across Seoul, Aoife pressed her thumbs into Mrs. Kim's shoulder blades, feeling the tension slowly release. The older woman sighed contentedly, melting into the massage table. "You have a gift, dear," Mrs. Kim murmured, her Korean heavily accented but understandable. "My daughter was right to recommend you." "Thank you, Mrs. Kim. Just breathe for me." Aoife had started as a masseuse in Lagos, working at a small spa near the beach. But she'd wanted more. Korea had called to her. She'd seen K-dramas, fallen in love with the culture, the food, the way tradition and modernity danced together. So she'd saved every naira she could, applied for a work visa and taken the leap. It hadn't been easy. The language barrier, the cultural differences, the loneliness of being so far from home. And the stairs, God, the stairs. Korea wasn't as diverse as Lagos, and her dark skin and generous curves drew attention everywhere she went. Some of it was curiosity, some was admiration, and some was less pleasant. She finished Mrs. Kim's session, helped the older woman sit up slowly, and left her to dress in privacy. In the hallway, her co-worker and friend, Ji-won, was waiting with 2 cups of tea. "Long day?" Ji-won asked in Korean, handing Aoife a cup. "Always," Aoife replied in the same language, her accent still noticeable, but her fluency impressive. "But good. Mrs. Kim is becoming a regular. You have that effect on people. They come once, they're hooked." Ji-won grinned. "Must be those magic hands. Or I'm just very good at my job." "That too." Ji-won checked her tablet. "Oh, you have a new client tomorrow. 2 p.m. VIP booking." "Who?" "Some businessman. First-time client. His friend made the appointment. Said he desperately needs to relax." Ji-won wiggled her eyebrows. "Apparently he's some big-shot CEO. And according to the notes, very handsome." Aoife rolled her eyes. "I don't care what he looks like, Ji-won. I care about helping him feel better. So noble. So professional." Ji-won laughed. "But seriously, the friend who booked said this guy hasn't slept in weeks. Sounds like he really needs you." Aoife had seen many beautiful people in her 2 years working at the spa. Korea seemed to breed beauty, flawless skin, delicate features, bodies maintained with the discipline of soldiers. She'd massaged actors, models, socialites whose faces graced magazine covers. Beauty, she'd learned, was common in Seoul's elite circles. But nothing had prepared her for the man on her massage table at 2 p.m. on that Saturday afternoon. "Mr. Park," she'd called softly, entering the dimly lit room. He'd grunted in response, and she'd caught her first glimpse of him. Even face down in the massage cradle, even with obvious exhaustion carved into every line of his body, he was stunning. Lord have mercy, she'd thought, her professional composure slipping for just a moment. His back was a landscape of lean muscle and smooth skin, shoulders broad enough to carry the world, tapering to a narrow waist. But it was the tension radiating from him that caught her attention. Every muscle coiled tight, his entire body rigid with stress. This was a man at the end of his rope. "My name is Aoife. I'll be your masseuse today," she'd said, falling back on her professional training, even as her heart did something stupid in her chest. She'd warmed the oil between her palms, trying to center herself. This was just another client, just another body that needed healing. The fact that he was the most gorgeous man she'd ever laid eyes on was irrelevant. Then she'd touched him. Sweet Jesus. His skin was like silk under her palms, warm and smooth, and the moment her hands made contact, something electric passed between them. She felt it, knew he felt it too from the way his breath caught. Every professional instinct she had screamed at her to maintain boundaries, but her body had other ideas. "Focus, Aoife. He's a client. Just a client." But as her hands moved across his back, learning the geography of his muscles, the knots of tension, the story his body was telling, she found herself leaning closer than strictly necessary. Found herself breathing in the scent of him. Expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely male that made her mouth go dry. "You're very tense," she'd said, proud that her voice came out steady. "When was the last time you relaxed?" "Can't remember," he'd muttered, and the roughness in his voice sent shivers down her spine. She worked his shoulders, his back, losing herself in the rhythm of the massage. This was where she was most comfortable, in the zone, reading a body's needs, providing relief. But she couldn't ignore the way her pulse quickened every time her fingers traced along his ribs, the way her breath hitched when her palms slid down the strong column of his spine. "Get it together, girl. You're acting like you've never touched a man before." But she hadn't touched a man like this. In Lagos, in Korea, in all her years doing this work, no one had ever affected her this way. It was unprofessional, inappropriate, completely unlike her. And yet, when he'd asked her to turn over, when he'd said, "Go down," in that rough, desperate voice, her hands had trembled slightly as she moved to his chest. The first touch of her palms against his pectorals had nearly undone her. He was beautiful, devastatingly so. Even with his eyes closed, even with exhaustion etched into his features, he looked like something out of a sculpture. Sharp jawline, full lips, cheekbones that could cut glass. And his chest under her hands was firm and warm, his heart pounding so hard she could feel it against her palms. Her fingers had moved across his skin with professional precision, but inside, she was melting. The intimacy of the moment, his vulnerability, her hands on his bare chest, the charged silence between them, was almost too much. When her thumbs traced his collarbones, when she felt him shudder beneath her touch, when he made that sound, half sigh, half groan, heat had flooded through her body in a way that was definitely not professional. "Sorry," he'd muttered. "Don't apologize," she'd whispered, and meant it. "It means you're finally letting go." And he had. She'd felt it happen. The moment he stopped fighting, stopped resisting, stopped carrying the weight of whatever was crushing him. His breathing had deepened, his muscles had relaxed, and within minutes he was asleep. Aoife had stood there, her hand still on his chest, feeling his heartbeat slow to a peaceful rhythm, and something in her own chest had cracked open. This man, this beautiful, broken man had trusted her enough to let go, to sleep, and for reasons she didn't fully understand, that felt sacred. She'd finished the session even though he was sleeping, unable to stop touching him. Her hands had moved of their own accord, gentle strokes across his chest, his arms, his shoulders. Not therapeutic anymore, but something else, something tender. "You're in trouble, Aoife," she'd thought. Big trouble. When he'd finally woken, she'd been across the room, organizing her supplies and trying desperately to compose herself. She'd felt his eyes on her before she turned, felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. Their eyes had met, and the world had stopped. He was even more beautiful awake, eyes dark and intense, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And the way he looked at her, not just at her face, but at all of her, taking in her curves, her body, with an appreciation that was unmistakable, had made her skin flush hot. She'd seen that look before from men, but coming from him, it felt different. Not objectifying, but admiring, hungry, reverent. "You're awake," she'd managed to say, hoping he couldn't hear the tremor in her voice. "You slept for almost 40 minutes. The conversation that followed had been brief, professional, but underneath it all was a current of something that made her pulse race. When their fingers had brushed as she handed him his robe, she'd felt it again. That electric spark, that sense of connection that went beyond the physical. She'd left the room as quickly as she could without running, her heart pounding, her skin still tingling from touching him. In the staff room, she'd leaned against the wall and pressed her palms to her cheeks, trying to cool the flush she could feel burning there. "Girl, what's wrong with you?" Ji-won had asked, looking up from her phone with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Aoife had lied. It was an intense session." "The VIP client? The handsome CEO?" Aoife had nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Ji-won's eyes had gone wide with understanding. "Oh no. Oh, Aoife, please tell me you didn't." "I didn't do anything," Aoife had said quickly. "I was completely professional." "But you wanted to." Aoife had groaned, covering her face with her hands. "I don't know what happened. He's just Ji-won. He's the most beautiful man I've ever seen. And his skin, it's so soft, and he was so vulnerable, and you're human," Ji-won had finished gently. "It happens. You spend an hour with your hands all over an attractive man. Feelings develop. But Aoife, you know the rules. Clients are off limits." "I know. Especially rich, powerful clients who could get you fired." "I know. And you're going to see him again if he books another session." Aoife had looked up sharply. "You think he will?" Ji-won had laughed. "Honey, I saw the way he looked when he left. Like a man who'd found religion. He'll be back." That had been both thrilling and terrifying. "Get over it," she whispered to herself. "He's just a man. Just another client. You'll probably never see him again." But sleep didn't come easily that night. And when it finally did, her dreams were filled with soft skin and gentle touches and a voice rough with exhaustion saying her name like a prayer. Joon-young had slept for 12 hours straight. 12 hours. He'd woken up in his own bed, sunlight streaming through the windows of his penthouse, feeling like a different person. The weight that had been crushing his chest for weeks was lighter. Not gone, his problems were still there, waiting for him like patient vultures, but manageable. And it was all because of her. Aoife. Even her name was beautiful. Exotic and melodic, rolling off his tongue like music. He'd said it to himself a dozen times since leaving the spa, testing the sound of it, committing it to memory. He'd tried to convince himself it was just the massage, just the relief of finally sleeping, just the professional skill of a talented masseuse who happened to be good at her job. But he couldn't stop thinking about her hands. The warmth of them, the strength, the way her fingers had seemed to know exactly where he hurt, exactly what he needed. And he definitely couldn't stop thinking about the glimpse he'd caught of her when he woke. Those curves that would haunt his dreams, that smile that had made his heart stutter. "This is insane," he muttered to himself as he made coffee in his pristine, barely used kitchen. "She's a masseuse. You paid for a service. That's it." But his fingers were already reaching for his phone, already pulling up the spa's number. Min-jun found him 2 hours later, sitting in his home office, actually looking rested for the first time in weeks. "Holy shit," his friend said, stopping in the doorway. "You're alive. You're actually alive." Joon-young looked up from his laptop. Was there doubt? "Brother, I've seen corpses with more color than you had yesterday." Min-jun dropped into the chair across from him, studying him with open amazement. The spa worked. "I slept for 12 hours. 12. Min-jun's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? What the hell did they do to you?" Joon-young's mind flashed to Ife's hands on his chest, her breath warm above him. That moment of electric connection when their eyes met. Just a very good massage. A very good massage, Min-jun repeated skeptically. That's it? Nothing else? What else would there be? I don't know, man. You just look different. Like you found religion or something. Min-jun leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Wait, was the masseuse hot? Joon-young felt heat creep up his neck. That's not relevant. Oh my god, she was hot. You're blushing. Joon-young Park doesn't blush. Min-jun was grinning now, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Tell me everything. Was she Korean? Japanese? Chinese? Nigerian? Min-jun's eyebrows shot up. Nigerian? As in from Africa? As in from Nigeria, yes. Joon-young tried to sound casual. And before you say anything inappropriate, is she beautiful? Joon-young made the mistake of pausing too long. She is. You hesitated. That means she's gorgeous. Min-jun was practically bouncing in his seat now. This is perfect. This is exactly what you need. A beautiful woman who makes you feel good. It's not like that. She's a professional. I'm a client. Sure. And I'm the Pope. Min-jun's grin was infuriating. So when are you seeing her again? Joon-young cleared his throat. I may have booked another appointment. For tomorrow. Min-jun whooped so loudly that Joon-young winced. I knew it. I knew there was something. Did you get her number? Are you going to ask her out? No. It's just for the massage. I need to maintain the stress relief. Stress relief. Is that what we're calling it now? Min-jun. Look, I'm happy for you. Genuinely. You deserve something good after the hell you've been through. But just. Min-jun's expression sobered slightly. Be careful, okay? You're vulnerable right now. Fresh off a divorce, stressed about the company. Don't mistake gratitude for something more. Joon-young wanted to argue that it wasn't like that. That he wasn't some pathetic, middle-aged man projecting feelings onto his masseuse because she was nice to him. But the truth was he didn't know what this was. All he knew was that he couldn't stop thinking about her. And that scared him more than he wanted to admit. The next day, 1:45 p.m., Joon-young arrived at the spa 15 minutes early, which was ridiculous. He was never early. CEOs didn't arrive early. They made other people wait. But here he was, sitting in the elegant waiting area, pretending to read a magazine while his heart raced like a teenager's. Mr. Park. The receptionist smiled at him. Aoife is ready for you. Room 7, same as last time. He stood, straightened his jacket unnecessarily, and walked down the familiar hallway. His palms were actually sweating. When was the last time he'd been nervous about anything? He knocked on the door of room 7. Come in, her voice called, and just the sound of it made his pulse quicken. Joon-young entered to find the room exactly as it had been before. Dimly lit, lavender-scented, peaceful. But this time, Aoife was standing by the massage table, and he got his first real look at her in full light. She was stunning. Her spa uniform was professional, modest even, but it couldn't hide the lush curves of her body. She was tall, he'd noticed that before. But seeing her standing there, meeting his eyes almost level with his own, was different. Powerful. She had presence, confidence in the way she held herself. Mr. Park, she said, and was it his imagination, or did her voice sound slightly breathless? It's good to see you again. Call me Joon-young, he said before he could think better of it. Please. A small smile curved her full lips. Joon-young, did the massage help? Did you sleep? 12 hours, he admitted. First real sleep I've had in weeks. Her smile widened, and it was like the sun coming out. I'm so glad. That's wonderful. There was a moment of silence where they just looked at each other. The air felt thick, charged with something Joon-young didn't want to name. Should I? He gestured to the table. Yes, of course. Same as before. I'll step out while you undress. She moved past him toward the door, and he caught that scent again, shea butter and vanilla, and something uniquely her. It took every ounce of his self-control not to reach out, not to touch her arm as she passed. Once she was gone, Joon-young quickly stripped down to his underwear and positioned himself face down on the table, covering himself with the towel. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. This is just a massage, he told himself. Just a professional service. Don't be weird about it. But when Aoife returned and her hands first touched his back, when that same electric current ran through him, he knew he was lying to himself. You're still very tense, she observed, her hands beginning their work. But not as bad as last time. Work stress, he managed. It's ongoing. Want to talk about it? Did he? He never talked about his problems with anyone except Minjun. But something about her voice, her presence, made him want to open up. Divorce, he said quietly. It's complicated. Her hands paused for just a fraction of a second. I'm sorry. That must be very difficult. You have a gift, he murmured. Has anyone ever told you that? He felt her smile more than saw it. A few people. My grandmother taught me. Turn over, please. He did, more carefully this time, hyper-aware of his body's response to her. When he was settled, eyes closed, he felt her move to the head of the table. The rest of the massage passed in charged silence. Every touch felt electric. Every breath felt shared. When her hands finally left his skin, he felt the loss like a physical ache. All done, she said quietly. Take your time getting up. She moved away, and he heard her organizing her things. But she didn't leave the room this time, just busied herself in the corner, giving him privacy to dress. Joon-young sat up slowly, his body relaxed but his mind racing. He needed to say something, do something. He couldn't just let this end like last time. Aoife, he said as he reached for his shirt. She turned, and he saw his own conflict reflected in her eyes. Would you? He stopped, suddenly unsure. What was he asking? What did he want? Would you have dinner with me? Her expression shuddered. I can't. Why not? You're a client. It's not professional. It's not appropriate. But even as she said it, he could see the war in her eyes. I don't care about appropriate. You should. She took a step back. I could lose my job. You could. This is complicated. My life is already complicated, he said, pulling on his jacket. What's one more complication? Joon-young. One dinner. That's all I'm asking. Let me take you somewhere nice, somewhere we can talk without this. He gestured to the massage table, the professional setting, just as two people, not client and masseuse, just people. He saw her wavering, saw the moment she almost said yes. Then she shook her head. I'm sorry. I can't. It stung more than it should have. I understand. But as he left the room, as he walked past her toward the door, she caught his wrist. The touch was brief, electric, and when he looked back at her, he saw everything she wouldn't say written in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered again. So am I, he said. And he was. Sorry that life was complicated. Sorry that professional boundaries existed. Sorry that he'd met the most captivating woman he'd ever encountered in the one place where pursuing her was impossible. He left the spa feeling more conflicted than when he'd arrived. His body was relaxed, but his heart was in knots. 2 days later, Joon-young returned to the spa. He'd told himself he wouldn't, that it was pathetic, that he needed to move on, find someone else, stop fixating on a woman who'd made it clear nothing could happen between them. But then the insomnia had returned, the stress, the weight, and he'd found himself calling the spa, requesting Aoife again. I'm sorry, Mr. Park, the receptionist had said. Aoife is on break this week. Would you like to book with someone else? He'd almost said no, almost hung up and gone home to suffer alone. Instead, he'd said yes. Fine. Same time slot. It had been a disaster. The masseuse who'd taken Aoife's place was professional, skilled, had excellent reviews according to the receptionist. None of it mattered. Her hands felt wrong. Too rough, too impersonal. Where Aoife's touch had been warm and intuitive, this woman's was mechanical, clinical. By the time the session was over, Joon-young was more tense than when he'd started. How was everything, Mr. Park? The receptionist asked as he checked out. Fine, he lied. When does Aoife return? Next Monday. Would you like to book with her then? Yes. And every Monday after that. For the next month. If the receptionist thought this was excessive, she didn't show it. Of course. I'll set up the recurring appointments. As Joon-young left the spa, he caught sight of his reflection in the glass door. He looked like a man obsessed. He probably was. The following Monday, when he walked into room 7, she understood why torture was considered a war crime. He was wearing a navy suit that fit him like a second skin, his dark hair styled perfectly, and when his eyes met hers, she saw everything she'd been trying to forget for a week. Hunger, longing, something deeper that terrified her. Aoife, he said, and just her name and his voice made her knees weak. Joon-young, welcome back. I tried someone else, he admitted, while you were on break. I heard. It wasn't the same. The weight of those words hung between them. It wasn't the same. Not the massage. Not the connection. Not the way his body responded to her touch. Well, I'm back now, she said, trying to keep her voice professional even as her pulse thundered. Same as before. Please. He undressed while she stepped out, and when she returned, she found him face down on the table, that beautiful expanse of his back on display. She took a moment just to look at him, to let herself feel what she'd been denying. Want. Pure, simple, dangerous want. She warmed the oil and placed her hands on his back. The moment they touched, she felt him shudder. I missed this, he said quietly. The massage. Your hands. Your touch. You. Aoife's breath caught. Joon-young. I know what you're going to say. That it's inappropriate. That I'm a client. That we can't. He turned his head, slightly, trying to look at her. But I can't stop thinking about you, Aoife. I've tried. For a whole week I tried. It didn't work. Her hands had stilled on his back. I thought about you too. She heard his sharp intake of breath. You did. Every day, I told myself it was foolish, that you were just a client, that this was just my job. Her hands began moving again, slowly, almost reverent. But I've been doing this for years, and I've never felt this way about anyone. What way? Like I can't breathe when you're around. Like my hands were made specifically to touch you. Like... She stopped, realizing she was saying too much. Like what? He pressed. Like I'm in trouble, she whispered. He was silent for a moment, then, I'm in trouble too. They worked in charged silence after that. Her hands moved over his skin with practiced skill, but every touch felt different now, heavier with meaning. Every stroke was a confession. Every press of her palms was saying what her mouth couldn't. When it was time for him to turn over, when he said, go down, with that same rough need in his voice, she felt something shift inside her. This time, when her hands touched his chest, when her fingers traced over his heart, she let herself feel everything. The want, the longing, the connection that went deeper than physical attraction. She looked down at him and found him watching her with eyes that saw too much. What are we doing? She asked softly. I don't know, he admitted, but I don't want to stop. We should. This is. I know what it is. I know all the reasons why we shouldn't. His hand came up suddenly, covering hers where it rested on his chest. The touch was electric, forbidden, perfect. But I haven't felt this alive in years, Aoife. Since before my marriage fell apart. Since before I became just a company and a divorce settlement and a problem to be solved. You make me feel human again. Tears pricked at her eyes. You make me feel seen. Like I'm more than just the foreigner. The exotic one, the girl with magic hands. Like I matter. You do matter. They stayed like that for a moment, his hand over hers, hearts racing in sync. Then Aoife gently pulled away, resumed the massage with trembling fingers. When the session ended, when he was dressed and ready to leave, he paused at the door. I won't come back, he said quietly. Her heart dropped. What? I can't keep doing this. Wanting you and not being able to have you. It's torture. He looked at her with such raw honesty it hurt. So I won't come back. Unless you give me another option. Joon-young. Think about it. Please. That's all I ask. Then he was gone, and Aoife was left standing in the dimly lit room, her hands still tingling from touching him, her heart in pieces. 1 week later, Aoife had been miserable. She'd gone through the motions of work, given excellent massages to clients she barely registered. She'd smiled and been professional and died a little inside every time 2 p.m. Monday rolled around and Joon-young didn't show up. He'd kept his word. He hadn't come back, and she missed him so much it physically hurt. Then, 2 weeks after their last session, the spa receptionist had called her into the office. Aoife, we have an unusual request. Mr. Park has asked for a home visit. He's willing to pay triple the normal rate. Aoife's heart had stopped. Home visit. He says his schedule is too busy to come to the spa, but he desperately needs your services. We normally don't do house calls, but for a client like Mr. Park. The manager had looked at her carefully. Are you comfortable with this? Every instinct screamed that this was a terrible idea. Going to his home, being alone with him, crossing every professional boundary that existed. Yes, she'd heard herself say, I'm comfortable, which was how she found herself standing outside a luxury penthouse in Gangnam on a Saturday evening, her massage table folded under one arm, her supplies in a bag, her heart trying to escape her chest. She rang the bell. The door opened and there he was. Joon-young looked different outside the spa, more relaxed, dressed in casual black pants and a soft gray sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. His hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. He was barefoot. He looked devastatingly beautiful. Aoife, he breathed. You came. You requested my services. I did. Come in. She stepped into the penthouse and nearly gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Seoul skyline. The interior was modern, minimalist, all clean lines and expensive furniture. It was the kind of place she'd only seen in magazines. Where would you like me to set up? She asked, trying to sound professional even as her hands shook. The bedroom has the most space, he said, then seemed to realize how that sounded. Or the living room. Whatever you're comfortable with. Living room is fine. She set up her massage table with practiced efficiency, hyper-aware of him watching her every move. The space felt different from the spa. More intimate, more dangerous. This was his territory, his home. She was the visitor here. I'm ready when you are, she said when everything was prepared. He nodded, then paused. Aoife, I need to tell you something first. Her heart raced. Okay. I didn't ask you here just for a massage. I know. You do. She smiled slightly. Joon-young, I'm not stupid. And I'm not naive. I know what this is. Then why did you come? Because... She took a breath, decided to be honest. Because I missed you. Because I've been miserable for 2 weeks. Because I can't stop thinking about you either. The look on his face, relief, joy, hunger, made her knees weak. I need to be clear about something, he said, moving closer. My divorce is almost finalized. My ex-wife signed the papers. She's getting a settlement, but not my company. That fight is over. I'm glad. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to think I'm some married man looking for a distraction. I'm free, Fa. For the first time in years, I'm free. And what do you want to do with that freedom? He closed the distance between them until they were inches apart. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Close enough that she could count his eyelashes. I want to take you to dinner. I want to know everything about you. I want to hear about Lagos and your grandmother and why you came to Korea. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. I want to touch you without it being a professional service. I want to see if this thing between us is real or just my imagination. It's real, she whispered. Then say yes. Have dinner with me. Tonight. Right now. Forget the massage. Forget the professional boundaries. Just be with me. Aoife knew she should say no. Should maintain her boundaries, protect her heart, be smart about this. But she was so tired of being smart. Yes, she said. The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. Yes. Yes. But Joon-young. I still need to give you that massage first. You paid for it, and... She reached up, gently touching his shoulder. You're still tense. I can feel it. His eyes darkened. Then by all means, do your worst. She should have known it would be different here, in his space, without the clinical setting of the spa. The moment her hands touched his bare back, the moment she felt his skin under her palms in his bedroom with the city lights glittering beyond the windows, she knew there was no going back. This wasn't professional. This wasn't clinical. This was foreplay. Her hands moved over him with the same skill, but every touch lingered longer. Every stroke felt like a promise. She could feel his breathing change, could see the way his muscles tensed and released under her fingers, could sense the barely controlled hunger in every line of his body. When she asked him to turn over, when she said, "It's time," in a voice barely above a whisper, the look in his eyes nearly undid her. He turned slowly, deliberately, holding her gaze the entire time. "Go down," he said, but this time it wasn't a request for a chest massage. It was a challenge, a question. How far are we going to take this? Aoife's hands found his chest, began their work, but her movements were slower now, more intentional. She leaned over him, her face inches from his, and saw her own desire reflected in his dark eyes. "Aoife," he breathed. "Yes. I want to kiss you." Her hand stilled. "That wouldn't be professional." "I don't care about professional anymore." "Neither do I." He sat up in one fluid motion, his hands coming to cup her face. For a moment, they just looked at each other, both breathing hard, both trembling with want. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "If you don't want this, tell me now." Instead of answering, she closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, testing. Then it deepened, and Aoife felt like she was drowning in the best possible way. His hands moved from her face to her waist, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, her own hands tangling in his hair. He tasted like mint and possibility. His lips were soft but demanding, and when his tongue traced the seam of her mouth, she opened for him with a gasp. They kissed like they'd been waiting their whole lives for this moment, like they were trying to make up for lost time. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Aoife felt like her entire world had shifted. "Come to dinner with me," Joon-young said again, his forehead resting against hers. "Let me take you somewhere beautiful. Let me do this right." "Okay," she whispered. "But Joon-young." "Yes. I need to change first. I can't go to dinner in my spa uniform." He pulled back slightly, a mischievous smile on his lips. "I think you look perfect. But if you insist..." He glanced at his watch. "Meet me at Cafe Magnolia at 5 p.m. Do you know it? The one in Samcheongdong." "That's the one." She nodded, already mentally going through her closet. wondering what one wore to dinner with a man who'd just kissed her senseless. As she packed up her massage table, as she prepared to leave, he caught her hand. Aoife. Yes. Thank you. For saying yes. For being brave enough to take a chance on this. She squeezed his hand. Thank you for not giving up on me. The smile he gave her was worth every risk, every broken rule, every professional boundary she'd just obliterated. As she left his penthouse, as the elevator descended to the ground floor, Aoife caught her reflection in the mirrored walls and barely recognized herself. She looked happy, radiant, alive. She looked like a woman in love. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what she was. Aoife had changed outfits 5 times. Just pick something. Minji wailed from where she was sprawled on Aoife's bed. You've tried on half your closet. Nothing looks right, Aoife said, holding up a blue dress, then discarding it. This is too formal. This is too casual. This makes me look like I'm trying too hard. Girl, you are trying too hard, Sujin said, but her smile was gentle. Just wear the yellow one. It makes your skin glow and shows off your curves. Plus, yellow is a happy color. You want to look happy, right? Aoife looked at the yellow wrap dress hanging on her closet door. It was one of her favorites, bright and cheerful, with a neckline that was flattering without being too revealing, and a skirt that hugged her hips before flaring out at the knees. You think it's okay? It's perfect. Now put it on before you're late. 20 minutes later, Aoife was in a taxi heading to Samcheongdong, her heart racing faster than the Seoul traffic. She'd paired the dress with simple gold jewelry, a gift from her mother, and sandals that made her even taller than usual. Her hair was down in natural curls, and she'd done her makeup carefully, highlighting her eyes and lips. She looked good. She knew she looked good. So why was she so nervous? Because this is real, she thought. This isn't a massage table between us. This isn't professional distance. This is just me and him and whatever this thing is between us. The cafe was in one of Seoul's most charming neighborhoods, tucked away on a quiet street lined with traditional Hanok houses and trendy boutiques. Cafe Magnolia was exactly the kind of place Aoife had always wanted to visit, but never had. Upscale but cozy, with large windows and plants everywhere, and a reputation for the best coffee in the city. She was 10 minutes early. Joon-young was already there. He was sitting at a corner table, staring out the window, and when she entered, when the little bell above the door chimed, he turned and saw her. The look on his face made every outfit change worth it. He stood immediately, and Aoife got her first look at him in casual clothes outside his apartment. He was wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored button-down with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, showing off forms that shouldn't be as attractive as they were. His hair was still slightly messy in that effortless way that probably took effort. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, or her dreams, possibly both. Aoife, he said as she approached, and she loved the way he said her name, like it was something precious. You look yellow enough, she joked, suddenly self-conscious. Breathtaking, he finished, his eyes never leaving her face. You look absolutely breathtaking. Heat flooded her cheeks. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. He smiled, pulling out her chair in a gesture so old-fashioned and sweet that it made her heart flutter. I ordered us some tea. I hope that's okay. I wasn't sure what you liked. Tea is perfect. They sat, and for a moment there was awkward silence. This was so different from the massage room. There! She'd known what to do, how to act. She was the professional, he was the client. Here, they were just 2 people on a date, and Aoife suddenly had no idea how to navigate this. This is weird, isn't it? Joon-young said, and she was grateful he'd voiced it first. So weird, she agreed. I'm used to seeing you half-naked and unconscious. He laughed, a real laugh that lit up his whole face. Well, when you put it like that, this is definitely an improvement. The tea arrived, and they busied themselves with the ritual of pouring, adding honey, anything to have something to do with their hands. So, Joon-young said finally, Tell me about Lagos. And just like that, the awkwardness melted away. Aoife found herself talking about her childhood, about growing up in a big, loud, loving family where everyone had an opinion about everything. She told him about her grandmother, the healer who'd taught her that touch could be medicine, that sometimes what people needed most was just to be seen, to be cared for. She sounds amazing, Joon-young said, his eyes warm. She died 2 years before I came to Korea. I think part of why I came was to honor her. She always told me to be brave, to see the world, to not let fear keep me small. And are you? Being brave? Aoife thought about it. I'm trying. Coming here was brave. Learning Korean was brave. Starting over in a place where I stood out everywhere I went. That was definitely brave. Do you regret it? No, never. She smiled. Well, maybe sometimes when I'm craving proper jollof rice and all I can find is the Korean version, which is just wrong. He laughed again. I'll have to take you to a Nigerian restaurant in Itaewon. There's apparently a small community there. You've been researching. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Maybe. A little. I wanted to understand you better. Something warm bloomed in Aoife's chest. That's actually really sweet. They ordered food. The cafe was famous for their brunch menu, even though it was evening. And the conversation flowed easily. Aoife asked about his company, and Joon-young's face lit up as he talked about building JY Industries from nothing, about the risks he'd taken, the late nights, the moments when he'd almost given up. What made you keep going? She asked. Stubbornness, mostly, he admitted. And Min-jun, my best friend, the one who booked that first massage session. He believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. We built the company together. He sounds like a good friend. The best. He's also probably going to be insufferable when he finds out about this date. He's been telling me for 2 weeks that I'm obsessed with my masseuse. And are you? Obsessed? Joon-young met her eyes across the table. Completely. Aoife's breath caught. That's intense. Too intense? Should I play it cooler? Pretend I'm not thinking about you constantly. No, she said quickly. I like the honesty. I'm tired of games, of people saying one thing and meaning another. Me too. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers, but not quite touching. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you say yes? To the house call, to this date. You could have kept saying no. Kept your professional boundaries. Why didn't you? Aoife looked at their hands, his pale and elegant, hers dark and strong, almost but not quite touching on the table between them. Because I was tired of being safe, she said finally. I came to Korea to have adventures, to live fully, and then I got here and I became so careful, so focused on following the rules, on being professional, on not making waves. And then you walked into my massage room looking like the saddest, most beautiful man I'd ever seen, and something in me just woke up. I looked sad, devastated, like you were carrying the weight of the world and it was crushing you. She finally closed the distance, her fingers intertwining with his. I wanted to take that weight away. I wanted to make you smile. And then you did smile and I was lost. His hand tightened on hers. I smiled. When you woke up, that first session, you smiled at me, and I thought, oh no, I'm in so much trouble. For the record, Joon-young said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm in a way that sent shivers up her arm, I thought the exact same thing when I saw you. Well, when I saw you, when I caught a glimpse of you, I thought, that's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and I'm absolutely screwed. Aoife laughed. You saw my backside first, didn't you? In my defense, it's a very impressive backside. Joon-young. What? I'm being honest. You said you liked honesty. But he was grinning now, playful in a way she hadn't seen before. Although your face is equally impressive. And your hands, especially your hands. My hands. They're magic. You know this. Their food arrived, and they were forced to separate their hands. But the warmth of his touch lingered. They ate and talked, and Aoife marveled at how easy this was. How comfortable. How right it felt to be sitting here with him, sharing food and stories and laughter. "Tell me about your marriage," she said, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, that's too personal. You don't have to." "No, it's okay. You should know." He set down his fork, his expression growing serious. "I met her at a business conference. She was beautiful, sophisticated, from old money. I was the nouveau riche upstart, and she made me feel legitimate, like I belonged in those elite circles." "You married her for legitimacy?" "No. I thought I loved her. Maybe I did in the beginning. But love wasn't enough to make her faithful. Or maybe I wasn't enough." He shook his head. "I worked all the time building the company. I thought I was building our future, but really I was just giving her time to find comfort elsewhere." "That's not your fault, isn't it? If I'd paid more attention, if I'd been there more." "She made her choices," Aoife said firmly. "You don't get to take responsibility for her betrayal. That's on her." He looked at her with such gratitude it made her chest ache. "Thank you for saying that. It's the truth. And Joon-young, you are enough. More than enough." The moment stretched between them, heavy with emotion. Then Joon-young cleared his throat, clearly trying to lighten the mood. "So, your turn. Tell me about your dating life in Korea. I can't be the first man to notice how incredible you are." Aoife laughed, but it was slightly bitter. "You'd be surprised. Korean men either fetishize me or are intimidated by me. I'm too tall, too curvy, too much. I went on a few dates when I first arrived, but they always felt weird. Like the men were more interested in the idea of dating a foreign woman than in actually getting to know me. Their loss. That's what my roommates say. But it gets lonely sometimes, you know? Being seen but not really seen." "I know exactly what you mean," Joon-young said quietly. "That's what my marriage felt like. I was the CEO, the provider, the trophy husband. But she never really saw me. Not the real me. What's the real you like?" He smiled. "I'm not sure anymore. I've been playing the role of serious businessman for so long, I forgot there was anything else. But with you, I feel like I can just be Joon-young, not Mr. Park, not the CEO. Just a man who sleeps better when you touch him and smiles more when you're around." Aoife felt tears prick at her eyes. "That's the sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me. I mean every word." They finished their meal in comfortable silence, stealing glances at each other, hands finding each other across the table again and again. When the check came, Joon-young paid before Aoife could even reach for her purse. "I invited you," he said when she protested. "Next time you can pay." Next time. If you want there to be a next time. Do you? "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Definitely yes." They left the cafe together, stepping out into the warm Seoul evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the streets were coming alive with the dinner crowd. "Can I walk you home?" Joon-young asked. "I live in Hongdae. That's pretty far." "I don't care. I'm not ready to say goodbye yet." So they walked through the winding streets of Samcheongdong, past art galleries and traditional tea houses, talking about everything and nothing. Joon-young told her about his childhood, about growing up middle class and dreaming of more. Aoife told him about her siblings, about the chaos and love of a big family. They talked about music. He was surprised to learn she loved K-pop. She was surprised to learn he secretly enjoyed it too. They talked about food, about travel, about dreams for the future. "I want to open my own spa someday," Aoife admitted. "Something upscale but welcoming. A place where people can come and actually heal, not just get a quick massage. Where my staff are treated well and paid fairly." "You should do it," Joon-young said immediately. "You'd be incredible at it." "It's expensive. The capital, the location, the licenses. If you need an investor, No, she said firmly. Thank you, but no. If I do this, I want to do it on my own. I don't want anyone to be able to say I only succeeded because some rich man bankrolled me. He looked at her with such admiration it made her blush. You're amazing. You know that. I'm stubborn. That too. But it's one of my favorite things about you. They'd reached the subway station near Hongdae. The walk had taken over an hour, but it had felt like minutes. This is me, Aoife said, gesturing to the station entrance. I could still walk you to your door. And have my roommates interrogate you? No way. They're already going to be insufferable enough when I get home. Joon-young smiled. Fair enough. He took both her hands in his, pulling her close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Can I see you again? Soon. How soon? Tomorrow. She laughed. You don't waste time, do you? I've wasted enough time already. I don't want to waste another second. Tomorrow is my long day at the spa. I don't finish until 9 p.m. Then I'll pick you up at 9. We'll get late dinner. Joon-young. Please, say yes. Let me be that annoying boyfriend who shows up at your work. Boyfriend. Her heart skipped. He looked suddenly uncertain. Too fast? Should I have said guy you're seeing? Or man you went on one date with? No, Aoife said, standing on her tiptoes to press a quick kiss to his cheek. Boyfriend is good. Boyfriend is perfect. The smile that broke across his face was like the sun coming out. Yeah, but Joon-young. If you're going to be my boyfriend, you should probably know I don't do casual. I don't do games. I'm all in or I'm out. Good, he said, pulling her closer. Because I'm all in. Have been since the moment your hands touched my back and I finally felt peace for the first time in months. He kissed her then, properly this time, right there on the street with people walking past and the city buzzing around them. It was soft and sweet and full of promise, and when they finally broke apart, Aoife felt like her whole world had shifted on its axis. Tomorrow at 9, she confirmed. Tomorrow at 9, he agreed. She made herself walk away, made herself descend into the subway station even though every part of her wanted to stay. At the bottom of the stairs, she turned back and found him still standing there, watching her with that look on his face, the one that said she was something precious, something worth waiting for. She waved. He waved back, and then she was on the train, surrounded by strangers, grinning like an idiot. Her phone buzzed. A message from Joon-young. I miss you already. Is that crazy? She typed back. If it's crazy, we're both insane. I miss you too. His response was immediate. Can't wait for tomorrow. Me neither. When she finally got home, both her roommates were waiting up, demanding details. Aoife told them everything, the cafe, the conversation, the kiss, the promise of tomorrow. He called himself your boyfriend. Minji squealed. And you said yes? Sujin added. I did, Aoife confirmed, still grinning. They spent the next hour analyzing every detail, every word, every look. But even as Aoife talked, part of her mind was already on tomorrow, on seeing him again, on whatever this beautiful, terrifying, perfect thing was that they were building together. That night, she fell asleep with her phone next to her pillow, a smile on her face, and Joon-young's last text glowing on her screen. Sweet dreams, beautiful. Dream of me. She did. 6 months later. The grand opening of Aoife's Touch was everything she dreamed of and more. The space was beautiful, warm, welcoming, with private treatment rooms and a waiting area that felt like a sanctuary. She'd hired 5 therapists so far. 2 Korean, 1 Filipino, 1 Nigerian who'd just moved to Seoul, and 1 mixed-race woman who'd been struggling to find work in the beauty industry. We're creating a space where everyone belongs, Aoife had told them at their first staff meeting. Where clients feel welcomed regardless of who they are, and where we support each other as a team. The opening day was packed. Friends, family, supporters, and of course, Joon-young and Min-jun. Look at this place, Min-jun said, genuinely awed. Aoife, this is incredible. You did this. We did this, she corrected, looking at Joon-young. I couldn't have done it without his support. I didn't do anything except believe in you, Joon-young said, pulling her close. This is all you. Ji-won was there too, having left the old spa to become Aoife's head therapist. Remember when you were just the girl with magic hands who had a crush on a client, she teased. Look at you now. Look at us now, Aoife corrected, gesturing to the bustling spa. The first official client was scheduled for 2 p.m. When Aoife checked the booking sheet, she laughed out loud. What? Joon-young asked. My 2 p.m. appointment. Take a guess who it is. Min-jun trying to get free massages. Nope. You. He grinned. I wanted to be your first official client. For old time's sake. Plus, I'm actually pretty tense. Wedding planning is stressful. Their wedding was in 2 months, a fusion ceremony with both Korean and Nigerian traditions. Aoife's family was flying in from Lagos, and Joon-young's mother had been surprisingly warm and welcoming once she'd actually met Aoife and seen how happy her son was. All right, Mr. Park, Aoife said in her most professional voice. Follow me to treatment room 1. Will there be a happy ending? He whispered as they walked. Joon-young. But she was laughing. In the treatment room, her treatment room, in her spa that she owned, Aoife prepared her table while Joon-young undressed. When he was settled face down, she warmed the oil and placed her hands on his back. The moment they connected, she felt it. That same electric current, that same sense of rightness that she'd felt that very first time. You're still tense, she observed. Wedding jitters. Having second thoughts. Not even for a second. Just want everything to be perfect for you. Her hands moved across his skin with practiced skill, finding every knot, every tight muscle. It will be perfect because we'll be together. That's all that matters. They were quiet for a while, just being present in the moment. Then Joon-young spoke. Remember that first session? When I told you to go down. How could I forget? I think I fell in love with you in that moment. When your hands touched my chest, and I felt peace for the first time in months. I fell in love with you then too, even though I tried so hard not to. I'm glad you failed. Me too. When the session ended, when Joon-young was relaxed and smiling, he sat up and pulled her into his lap. Thank you, he said, for the massage. For everything. For taking a chance on me. For pushing through your fear. For building this incredible business. For agreeing to be my wife. He kissed her softly. For being you. Thank you for seeing me. For fighting for us. For showing me that I belong anywhere I choose to be. Always. 2 months later, they got married in a beautiful venue in Seoul with few family and friends. She'd never felt more beautiful, more loved, more seen. Her father walked her down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. My daughter, the dreamer, he said in Yoruba. You've made us so proud. I love you, Joon-young whispered. I love you too. Forever. Forever, he agreed. 3 years later, Aoife stood in the nursery of their new home, a beautiful house in Hanamdong that they'd bought together, decorated together, made into a home together. She was 9 months pregnant, hugely, massively pregnant, with twins, a boy and a girl, the doctor had said at the ultrasound. Congratulations. Joon-young had cried, actual tears of joy. JY Industries was doing better than ever. Joon-young had expanded into sustainable technology, making a name for himself as an innovator who cared about more than just profits. And their marriage was everything she'd ever dreamed of. They fought sometimes, disagreed often, but they always came back to each other. Always chose love. Always remembered what they'd fought so hard to build. Aoife. Joon-young said softly. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. To that first date, to marriage, to building this life with me. For not giving up when things got hard. for being brave enough to love me. She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd walked into her massage room 3 years ago, looking lost and broken, who'd found healing under her hands, who'd fought for them when she'd almost given up. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, "for loving all of me, the masseuse, the businesswoman, the dreamer, the scared girl from Lagos who thought she didn't belong in your world. You belong everywhere you choose to be, and I'm so grateful you chose to be with me." He leaned down to kiss her, gentle and sweet, and in that moment Aoife felt it. The same spark she'd felt that very first time she touched him. The same electricity. The same sense of rightness. Some things she'd learned only got stronger with time. Thanks for watching K Whisper. Do well to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more.